Yeah, all right, everybody, welcome to State of LA. Got a host here, Mike Pugh, along with Donald Paz.
Yo, yo, what's up?
What's up, everybody? We got two news stories for you today. We're going to be talking about Mayor Karen Bass and her state of address that she gave to Los Angeles. And it's been a huge developing story, so pardon us if we're trying to keep up with all the new developments, but we're also going to be covering what's going on with USC. First, we had the class valedictorian. Now we have all these sit-ins that have been staged and protests that are going on, going far greater than what USC had expected this to be. So it's a constantly developing situation. So hopefully we can give you the most current info, and we'll be sure to let you know if more develops, if it even spirals even more out of hand for this college campus. All right, so let's go into our first topic. Let's talk about the mayoral city address that Karen Bass gave. Quick summary. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, in her State of the City address, urged businesses and philanthropists to help fund affordable housing for the city's homeless population. She introduced a new capital campaign, LA for LA, to attract private capital for housing. Despite housing efforts, 46,000 people remain unhoused in the city. Bass also announced plans to address the city's $476 million budget deficit, the creation of a climate cabinet for climate change initiatives, and preparations for appointing a new police chief and hosting the 2028 Summer Olympics.
And there is an update now with the budget. I'm reading this off the LAist website. It says here that Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass on Monday presented a proposed budget as the city struggles with its ongoing deficit in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Like Mike had pointed out, the $476 million deficit that's going on and for the current fiscal year, I should say. But from that $476 million projected deficit, $289 million of that is actually overspending that the city's doing, and $187 million of that is less revenue than expected. So two things: they're spending too much money and they're not making enough money. With that, people are probably wondering why Mayor Karen Bass addressed it now in the State of LA address, and that was because of the budget shortfall for the upcoming fiscal year, which July 1st. So it seems like the city of LA's fiscal year runs from, I'm assuming, July 1st to June 30th. And it's expected to be higher because of the new contracts with the city's multiple labor unions. Mayor Bass did also address in the State of LA about removing vacant positions from the budget. Apparently, there are some vacant positions within the city's openings. I'm assuming these are people that put in their 2-week notice and then those roles haven't been fulfilled. That's what I'm thinking when they're saying vacant positions. Like when you put in 2-week notice and they haven't filled, then maybe they're thinking, we just won't fill that position, which I always feel when that happens, man. I don't know if it's happened to you, but it's happened to me where someone leaves and then they had a certain set of responsibilities and now it kind of falls on you or whoever else within the team.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's definitely a strategic play from companies to just not have to hire someone else again, because I know that's another salary they have to give up. So they thought, why don't we just give it to these other people? We'll split it and divvy it up. I definitely had that experience when I worked at the bank. Someone would leave and they were someone that would take care of the supplies and they would take care of all these other little things like ordering coffee bags for the customers that put out coffee for the customers and all that. So I just think it's interesting, but I definitely wanted to get your thoughts on what you think Mayor Bass is trying to get to with this. I think it's kind of interesting that the conversation about, the budget's going to be higher starting July 1st because of the labor unions. I totally get it. I totally understand that everybody's pay is technically
Mm-hmm.
an expense to somebody, which is in this case, it's an expense to the city of LA. But I also do feel like I don't like the idea of, and I'm hoping this is not what they're doing. I'm hoping this is not what Mayor Karen Bass is saying, but I just don't like the idea of, hey, it's going to cost more now. The labor's just a lot more now because these contracts with the unions have been redone. And because of that, it's going to be a very hang tight, everybody. We're going to be in for a wild ride type of vibe. At least that's what it kind of feels like, especially when there's overspending. There's reports that there's overspending, and then there's reports that there's not enough revenue coming in. So I don't know. It's crazy because everything's expensive as it is already in LA, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gas is going up to close to $6 if it hasn't already hit $6. I filled up luckily at $4.99 the other day because I just happened to find a gas station that I wasn't expecting. And I saw that it was $4.99, so I decided to stop. But I don't know, man. It just kind of keeps harping on the thing that we talked about last time when the elections were here.
Mm-hmm.
About, the state and now the city looking to figure out ways to kind of cut costs. But then it just feels like the day-to-day living for everybody is just the city's expensive to live in. I know Mayor Bass has a lot to do in terms of homelessness situation. I don't know. I just think it's such a tough thing to call. But I guess in a way, I'm glad that she addressed certain things and said, "Hey, like, we're trying to take care of homelessness," like you said in what you read, and that they are trying to figure out ways to get private companies to come in and give some money to help the housing situation and the housing shortage. But, like, obviously, like, I don't know, to me, it just feels like this stuff just isn't happening fast enough. I don't think they have appointed a new chief of police, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, it just feels like there's a lot that has to be done, and I think, like, it's just maybe I don't know what else has to happen. Things are already expensive, and then we got the in what, like, 2 years? Or no, 2024, 4 years, and, I don't know, I just feel like things are gonna go up. I mean, the tourism part of the Olympics is gonna be insane here in LA, you know?
Hmm.
I just think it's gonna drive up prices on things, and I don't know how this all makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think just the average Angelino, we just want to be upfront. Just tell us if it's going to cost more, why. But costs are going to keep going up, right? It's just an unfortunate reality.
Yeah.
I mean, here in our household, bro, we Uber, we Lyft, we don't bother with gas. Um, Only the person who has to go out and work on a regular basis is paying gas. If my mom's got to run an errand, if I got to run an errand, we just Lyft just because it's a crazy expense. It's super expensive, right? Because you talked about the gas prices.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't realize it's already going to be that high, man. I can't believe $6 is insane. And you just look at everything, like we just ordered DoorDash the other day and we looked at, oh, McDonald's is cheap, right? And we see the price of McDonald's now, it's almost like $10 a sandwich. That's crazy
Mhm.
to think fast food, which is cheap and accessible, isn't really cheap anymore.
Yeah.
But we all got to stop eating McDonald's, people. Sorry to tell you, we all love the crack fries. They're amazing, but it's not good for us. And yeah, when it comes to these unions, I mean, I understand unions a lot. Jeremy and I have been going into it on all the podcasts, State of the Nation, and we're going to keep seeing unions get involved and be more vocal
Yeah.
because they've been effective of late of getting what they need. And let's be honest, a lot of people aren't being paid what they're supposed to be paid. Teachers have been struggling forever.
Mhm.
And, with the people involved, do you know what specific unions are going to be?
I mean, they said city labor unions, but I'm assuming City of LA employees are probably
Mhm.
people that work at LADWP. Was it like housing authority, even all the admin people in the buildings and whatnot? You know what I mean? I'm sure there's like a finance department,
Mhm.
all the departments that you have in any company, like HR and all. And I'm sure there's like social services people that are also city workers. And yeah, I think there's just a lot. I think that's probably why it was just summarized as like labor unions, because I feel like there's just too many. And I don't think there's like a definite like, hey, it's just one or two groups. I think there's many facets of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so looking towards the 2028 Summer Olympics, that's definitely going to be a lot of renovation and construction that needs to happen.
Mhm.
So just plumbers, electricians, all those people who work in the construction field, they're going to be ramping up to get everything ready. And all this housing that you're talking about, that they want to erect all these new buildings, have them up and ready to house people to get them off the street. Because with all this bad publicity LA has gotten of late with the homeless problem,
Yeah.
which is now labeled as an epidemic by our mayor. She said it's an ongoing state of emergency to get this rectified and get this dealt with, which will go into detail all the things that she was proposing under her address. Yeah. I think it just has to be addressed and justified where the money's going, because a lot of people are getting fed up. In one LA Times article I read that the Proposition 1 barely passed.
Yeah.
All this stuff that they've been recently proposing, people barely went along with, and they saw how narrow of a margin they got to get it to pass. So they're like, okay, people are tired.
Yeah.
People are fed up and people don't want to be dealing with this anymore. And yeah, the average person you talk to, they're like, this is still an issue. This is a problem. And as we keep talking to people, that's another ongoing segment we got is why people are leaving the city, leaving the state.
Mhm.
And it's because people are fed up. There's been too much going on that we have probably like one of the highest state taxes in the nation, right here in California. So if you're going to keep taxing us, you got to give us a good reason.
Yeah.
Here we are more liberal. Here we are for helping out those who are more disenfranchised, those who are struggling. And we can justify that, sure. But at some point, it's going to dig in our pockets too deep to where it's like, I know you're trying to put food on someone else's table, but we're struggling now to put food on our own table. And that's where it becomes very contentious and where people are going to push back on it. And if Democrats want to keep getting elected, man, they got to make sure people are able to eat. People are able to pay their bills. And if you talk to Jeremy and I, we're totally in support of unions. As much as it hurt us work-wise, financially, it put us in a bind. But we are advocates for people to be vocal, people to be paid their worth. And you just got to again, clarify what's going on, because now more than ever, people want transparency. And that's something you're going to always hear us say is what's really going on, and shine a light on things that are being overlooked and they want us to keep us in the dark about. But with a lot of this TikTok generation, people keep sharing information. So you can try to scoot around the bush, but we're going to find out, and we're going to be pissed if you didn't tell us straight up.
Yeah, for real. No, definitely. I think that's the thing. As far as the communication goes from this city's perspective and just from any government perspective, it's like just be transparent because people know things now, and the internet does inform people. That's why, to your point of the TikTok thing, this is why there's a proposed ban on it. So, like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Because it's like too much information that certain governments don't want you to know about. But to your point, yeah, I totally get it. And that's the thing. I understand Mayor Karen Bass got elected, and this is the undertaking that she has to do, which I know no one's really saying it and no one's talking about it, but this is all stuff that was kind of done under Garcetti. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Which, again, this is why so many city council people are now getting in trouble, going to jail and stuff like Weezer and stuff, because it turned out all the gentrification that was happening in LA was being okayed by all of them. And now that we have other leaders like Eunice Hernandez, there's this whole thing of there has to be some sort of pushback towards all this because it's just getting too much, man. Thing is, people shouldn't have to feel they can't live in the city that they grew up in. You know what I mean? Especially for us Angelinos that are native. I don't like it. I have friends that don't live in LA. They live outside of LA, whether it's the Valley or Lancaster, Palmdale or Riverside. These are people who grew up here, grew up in Highland Park, grew up in Boyle Heights and all that. They come across like, yo, like I would love to go live in those areas or live in that vicinity of downtown LA or LA proper. Like you and I, we grew up going to Glendale, going to Burbank, going to Pasadena,
Mhm.
and being able to go back home, knowing it took like 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes at most. A lot of them do wish they could do that, but it's just too expensive to do that. To find a good apartment and all that, it's just a lot. There's like a lot. Like you have to like search, you have to dig, you have find, you have to hopefully find something and it's within your budget. And it just feels like back then that wasn't the case. You just pick and choose what neighborhood you lived in and you just lived in it. And it's just kind of crazy how that became the thing now where people are trying to figure the housing part for themselves out. That's why they live in these faraway places now. So I just think I know Mayor Bass, this was the hand she was dealt when she came in. But I mean, I'm just hoping she takes care of it because at this point, it's like I just want them to take care of what they need to take care of. To me, it's not even about whether I like her or not or whatever.
Mhm.
Just get it done because I feel like, with Garcetti and even with him before that, like Villargoza, I don't think many people can say they have a better quality of life. If anything, the neighborhoods got better, right? Like a lot of the gang stuff got taken care of. There's not a lot of that now. It's kind of very minimal, but it got way too expensive now. So it's just kind of terrible that that was the trade-off. And I don't feel like that's fair. I feel like that shouldn't have been the trade-off. I think there is a way to make it affordable for people that lived here and not have to feel like you're driving people out because neighborhoods are changing. Like, you go to Highland Park, you go to Boyle Heights now, it's not what it used to look like. And it almost feels like unwelcoming to certain people there. And that's the thing that makes it tough. So
Mm.
yeah, I think Mayor Bass has a lot of work cut out for her. And I think she just has to kind of figure that part out. But hopefully she can do something because there needs to be change. And I think it starts with housing for sure. Because like once housing gets taken care of, then everything else will follow. I think people just don't want to feel they have to be cramped up with like 6, 7 other people just to afford their rent. I think people are getting tired of that. And the thing is like we're all getting older, so we can only have so many years with roommates and stuff. You know what I mean?
All right, so looking at the LA 4LA, that is Karen Bass's latest initiative to try to get more privatized funding into trying to solve the homeless crisis. And at the moment, they are trying to model what they're doing off of a program that was ran in Atlanta, according to an LA Times article. And that program was able to raise over 150 million. And currently, they have raised about 10 million so far. So they're trying to do this whole approach of trying to get more philanthropy involvement in trying to solve the homeless crisis because as we mentioned before, as us as Angelinos, we're kind of tired of paying it out of our own pocket with tax dollars. So now they're looking at, well, let's default to what we always assume is the best solution. What we always assume is the best solution, and that's, well, let's have wealthy individuals do more of their part to try to fix what's going on with the rest of society, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is our current outlook. This is our current Hail Mary play, if you will, to see if we can get all the remaining funding we need to help with homelessness. Now, keep in mind, we do have that bond that we just approved, which was for $6.4 million.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently 6.4 billion doesn't cut it. And we still need way more money because as we mentioned earlier, that only accounted for about less than half of the homeless people that needed to be housed, that needed to receive additional health care
Mm-hmm.
to address all their mental issues and concerns. So
Yeah.
currently, we still need way more money. As we mentioned, it seems like there's never enough money that needs to be collected. So yeah, so we're just going to talk about that for a little bit. So what are your thoughts on that, Donald?
Yeah, man. I mean, I totally get the whole let's ask for rich people to bail us out thing. I think it's good. It's worth trying, I think. In my experience, especially as a renter in LA, I do understand that a lot of these properties are being bought by development companies, even like the apartment buildings, like they're all being bought by development companies. You know, it's so and so corporation. That's where you apply when I have to apply to be on a wait list or something. It's like you're applying to a company that may or may not call you back for like a vacancy in a unit. And I think it's cool. And I know sometimes some of these projects are like mixed income or low income or tax credit where there's some sort of subsidy that gets done so that like the tenant doesn't have to pay a lot. They don't have to pay like market value because, you know, especially right now where we're at in downtown LA, market value is like hella high, bro. Like, if you go to like those apartment buildings where LA Live is at, in those streets of like Spring and Hill and Ho and all that,
Mm,
the studios, I don't know how much, but it feels like it's almost 2 grand. You know what I mean? It's like 15 to 1800. And then a one bedroom's like 2100 or 2200. And then if you have a family, which you probably need like 2 or 3 bedrooms, you're looking at like 3000, man, like probably 3 to 4000, depending on where it's at.
hmm
And that's just like a lot of money to be giving up for a monthly rent. You know what I mean? Especially when we don't own the place, you're just renting it. But I do understand that there's companies that like try to do the whole like, hey, like we're gonna do some properties outside and they're gonna be like a little cheaper because they're outside the main area. And also we're gonna have the government subsidize the pricing for this stuff. But in my experience, it's cool. But then I also don't like the idea that at any given point, and I know this happened they can take away all that in terms of like the subsidies and stuff. I think it kind of works by contract, if I'm not mistaken, where they basically get some sort of deal for like a decade or so. And they either renew it or they don't have it anymore. So then the building loses its status, like its low income or tax credit status. And then now you're paying market rate, or you're trying to figure out tenants that can pay market rate, which kind of bumps out those that were currently there unless they can somehow afford it. And I just noticed now that I'm talking about this, my aunt used to live in a building called Garland City Lights, which was right here on Garland and like I believe 8th Street.
mm.
And she was there because it was a low income building when she moved there. This was like a long time ago. It was like probably middle school, high school ish. I want to say that.
Oh, okay.
And the thing is, I notice now it says now leasing outside.
hmm
I'm like, why does it say now leasing? Is it in a low income building? Like, shouldn't you have like a wait list and then you call them up and then you say, hey, do you want this unit? And then kind of tell them what the rate is. But I'm thinking in my mind, if they're leasing, then that means that they're looking for people to like take that unit, which probably means that it's not cheap. So
hmm
in my mind, I'm like, did it lose its status or did some of the units become available for market rate, which I know that plays into it. I think if I'm not mistaken too, I want to say that if a developer builds a new building, I believe 10% of that building has to become like low income housing. Like it's kind of like
Yes.
you give that to the low income community and then the rest can be done at market rate.
hmm
So that's my only thing. I'm totally cool if the rich people want to come in and help out in the housing crisis. I think it's great, but I just sometimes feel there's always something that they want to gain from it. And it'd just be nice for them to just want to do it because they should want to do it because they want people not to be homeless in LA. And I'm like, okay, cool. Mayor Bass, do your thing. If you have to give them whatever tax breaks, then do it because at this point, we need these people housed. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes it's tricky with that stuff, man. This is why we got into this situation to begin with the other city councilmen when they revitalized downtown LA, man. Like apparently a lot of those buildings in downtown LA, which now we know one of them got abandoned and now is tagged up.
hmm
Apparently all that stuff was approved by the city councilman, and apparently a lot of them didn't even go through the proper approval. Like they kind of got their stuff expedited, and because there's all these investors that were involved. So I mean, I'm not trying to make this into like conspiracy thing or anything like that. It's cool if that's what we're gonna do, but hopefully the wealthy that want to give in and do it in a philanthropic way really do it because that's what they want to see. They want to see LA just become a city that doesn't have to deal with homelessness like the way it has before. I mean, we've had Skid Row for a long time, man, and it always feels to me like no matter how much time passes, I feel like Skid Row will always be Skid Row. I don't know if the city ever had a goal of saying, hey, like we want this area to not be known as Skid Row anymore because everyone's housed. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So that's my only thing about that piece of the whole story. Like, I think it'd be dope to do it, but I do have my reservations on it as well, because I'm thinking of just because of greed and stuff and just the kickbacks and all that, and everybody who's just trying to come across like they're helping, but then we don't even know.
Mhm.
That's just my takeaway from it all. But again, hopefully that this is being done the way it needs to be done so that the city of LA can move forward, you know?
Yeah, and as a quick aside, it's definitely something that needs to be handled as soon as possible due to the fact that I read that there's a bunch of federal vouchers that City of LA, State of California receive from the federal government. If they don't house these people, they're going to have to give that money back. So Karen Bass is feeling the pressure to definitely deliver on more housing as soon as possible. So yeah, there's a bunch of in development apartment buildings that were not going to have affordable housing units, now will. And they're even looking at current more and more apartment buildings that if they have vacancies. So it used to be a very common practice that landlords would just sit on a property, even if it was all vacant, and just have rent exorbitantly high because they could do a tax write-off. You know, they lost money and they would rather sit on a vacant lot than
Yeah,
use it for anything. So
exactly.
now, fortunately, at least for apartment buildings like that, they're going to have to fill those units in. They're going to have to bite the bullet as a directive from a mayor and actually house people. So there might be some homeless people living in a lap of luxury in some very nice apartments.
Yeah.
Everything goes through, which is the irony. You know, you have these wealthy individuals trying to take advantage of us and might blow back in their face. So the homeless crisis is a huge thing. It is an epidemic. It is something that's going to be an ongoing issue here in Los Angeles. So expect us to keep covering that. Let's cover just a few more things from that address that she gave. There was also a mention about, the Clean Climate Initiative.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is, downtown, it's a nightmare for us, but it's constantly being talked about as a positive thing, which is creating more bike lanes. Those of us in cars have a huge vendetta against that, but we understand that we want to make safe travel for our cyclists. There's this huge initiative here in California to go clean energy by the year 2035.
Mm-hmm.
And what was talked about recently is there's even been a bunch of protests and a bunch of people making a big deal about trying to clean up our ports. They want a green port as soon as possible because there's been reports that by Long Beach, LA port area, by the coast,
Mm-hmm.
there are concerned health risks that people have reported having. Some reported having respiratory issues.
Mm-hmm.
Some have said that they've had life expectancy cut at least by 8 years compared to everyone else in the surrounding area living by that port. So that's something that Bass has been. I feel like she's been kind of being pressured into doing something about it since there are more activists holding protests over that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like our younger generation is more vocal, more passionate about going green, about the climate. Something we used to care about. I remember when we grew up, there used to be recycle, reuse, reduce.
Yep.
I don't know what happened to that. That was a huge thing.
Yeah, man.
And I know we keep trying to recycle more here.
Yeah.
I know we're terrible here at my household, but it's something that we should be a high priority. But no one really
Yeah.
cleans their plastic and put them in the blue bin. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, did you get a notice about the new year, the city of LA wanting to do compost and stuff, and you guys having to put that in the green bin now, or no?
yes, we've been doing the composting, even though they don't properly tell you what to put in there, which that's something I guess I'll quickly break down. Composting, anything that you think, when you look at it and you think, yeah, that'll probably break down on its own,
Mm-hmm.
you could put in that compost. But if it's something that spoils, like dairy,
Yeah.
shouldn't be going in the green bin. But they don't tell you that. And there's a whole list of things that they give you, and it's a bad list because then I remember seeing just on YouTube a basic thing about people doing compost in LA, doing like home gardens and like Crenshaw and a bunch of areas in the inner city where they have food deserts. They're trying to build these, which we'll talk about probably later.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a great topic to get into. They're trying to address food deserts. So areas where there's no grocery stores,
Yeah.
where all you have is liquor stores and fast food, and there's nothing healthy to eat for miles, literal miles. You can't
Mm-hmm.
walk to any actual grocery store to get fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
And so there's all these initiatives to do like local composting.
Mm-hmm.
And they give you a whole list of things not to put in there. But if you look on like what Don's talking about,
Yeah.
if you look at that list that the city gave you, it doesn't give you the proper instructions of how to do composting. So please, if you're going to be taking part in this,
Yeah.
actually look it up yourself. And we'll probably provide links. I'll probably provide a link to that video I'm talking about,
Yeah.
where they're doing composting and they're trying to do like local community gardens.
Yeah.
I think that's the word. Community
Yeah.
props. Something like that.
I feel like you should just do the tutorial yourself.
Oh, I
Be like,
know, right?
You'd be like, hey, this is how you compost, and then you put it out here. You wait for them to pick it up.
That's true. We should little tutorial.
Yeah.
But yeah, do you have any like more thoughts on cleaner energy?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of didn't fully understand what she was trying to get to with this, but
Mm.
I mean, I know climate change is real, right? You know, we just had a solar eclipse, and then after that, it got really hot. And then after it was like super cold here, and I was like wearing like hoodies, and now all of a sudden it's like 80 degrees, like literally the next day. I'm just messing around. Hey man, like I'm all for it. I know they gotta address it because, especially with the state of California, right? At first there was a drought years ago, and then there was like a
Mm.
whole thing in the news about how there was a drought. And we were praying for rain, and rain came, and it was like, oh, like hallelujah. And then I think there was a report when those rains came that like it wasn't enough for the reserve, because I guess we need to put some in a reserve.
Mhm.
And I guess it wasn't enough, so we needed more rain. And obviously, for a couple years now, the state of California in itself has had struggles with the seasons not being the seasons. Living in LA, we know like 4 seasons isn't really a thing here, dude. It's either hot or it's like cold, but when it's cold, it's not snowy cold. It's just cold. It's like, you could just wear a long sleeve shirt and you're good.
Mhm.
But it just feels like that means we don't get the 4 seasons as like other areas do. So I don't know. I think they've been trying to figure out how to address that for a while. And I think it's great that she brought it up though, because I think we've only heard this as a state, you know what I mean? But I don't think we've ever heard this on the city level. So I thought it was really cool that she at least brought it up in the city level. But I didn't fully understand what she was trying to get to with that. But I hope that whatever that is, that it also becomes something that gets resolved as well. Because yeah, man, we're feeling it here in LA, man. I believe Eunice Hernandez, like last year, presented that one thing with a bus stop where like they put like a shade and stuff so that people who take the bus don't have to be in the hot sun. Wait, whoa, we had a hell of a heat wave last year, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's like trying to prevent that or trying to like minimize people's experiences to go through that. If that's what she's trying to do, then I'm for it, man. It was tough last year with that heat wave, bro. Like it was insane, man. And I don't have like central AC or anything. So
Mhm.
I was at work and just like waiting until it was like dark to leave so that I wouldn't have to feel it. You know what I mean? So it's just like things like that. If we could somehow prevent that, that'd be great. But yeah.
No, for sure. It's funny. Just a quick aside. I always thought climate change and how bad LA air is, I thought it was just people talking, right? But then I would go up to like Solvang up north real quick from Northern California
Yeah.
and just go for a weekend and come back. And bro, I'm coughing for a few days, man. I'm just thinking like, wow, I never knew going from fresh, clean air where you have crops and you have vegetation, you have like nature around you, and you come back to the city and think, oh, well, okay, yes, this is better. Flying in from, I think we did a Europe trip graduation
Mm-hmm.
from my college. And I remember flying back into the city. That's when I noticed that LA is kind of within a basin. I can actually see the mountain range around and it kind of dips and you just see it almost looks like a giant crater. And I realized, oh, okay. I always heard that description, but I never saw it until I flew back into the city.
Yeah.
And then, bro, it was just gray.
Yeah.
There was so many clouds and smog. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now I see the smog. I know we get smog tests every so often on our vehicles, but to
Cars, yeah.
actually see it coming in, you realize, oh yeah,
Yeah.
we actually do need to clean up the air in LA because we are within a basin. So that means that
Yeah.
it creates like a little pocket that actually keeps more of that in and it doesn't completely evaporate into the air like we think it does. It does stick around.
Mm.
So that's why we definitely, within LA at least, I don't know about the rest of California, but definitely in LA, we got to clean up our air.
Yeah, I forgot that we had smog, to be honest, because I'm so used to it already. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's right, that is a problem we have. It's like, I think we got so accustomed to it. It's just like we just learn to live with it or something.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you do. And then you realize you develop all these health problems later.
Yeah.
Last point, just to kind of cover the fact that I know you briefly mentioned that we are looking for a new police chief. And currently we have an interim police chief, Troy, who I think he was like the assistant. So he was just below the last police chief that was in office.
Oh, okay.
So he's just interim, and it was part of his deal to be the interim police chief is that it was temporary until they find the next person. So he's not a candidate to stay and remain in that position. Someone else will come in and replace him.
Oh, okay.
So just to talk about what expectations are, because I know she tried to briefly touch upon the fact that they're trying to do a campaign to get more people to sign up for the police academy.
Yeah.
And anybody that doesn't know, it's right by Dodger Stadium. So those of us who went to school,
Elysian Park.
yeah, those in the area know exactly where it is because we would go like do marathons to raise money around that area and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, dude, like, what are your expectations on what the new police chief should try to do for LA? We don't know who it's going to be, but I know we all have our concerns about how that should go. I know that she did mention that they do have a system up and running for people who have mental issues instead of just deploying police officers to try to deal with the person, they actually assess it, address it, and send out a social worker that can talk the person down and actually have a
Yeah.
communication with whoever the individual may be. And then if it escalates to violence, then of course you got to bring the police in. But, individuals who are on type of spectrum, they have a hard time processing sometimes. So, if they sense any type of hostility, unfortunately, the police don't know how to handle that themselves. So it's great to have that program in place. But yeah, what are you expecting now that we're past post defund the police era? What are your thoughts on
Yeah.
what we should be doing?
I think there's some people out there who still want to defund the police.
Uh,
Yeah, no, they shouldn't be assessing mental health problems because if they do, it turns out to be a really terrible thing when they do take things into their own matters. With that said, what do I expect from a police chief? I don't know. I mean, outside of protecting and serving, which is like their jobs,
mhm.
I think someone that really understands Los Angeles and understands diverse communities, I think would be great. I think the thing with the police too, is, especially with LAPD, right? In movies and everything, it's always been this whole like, wow, like they're like the most dangerous thing you could join because of the fact that there's so many gangs in LA and all that. But I think a lot of this is just understanding communities, man. And I feel like a lot of these officers just don't make the point to understand the communities that they patrol. They just do what they have to do. I've met some really nice cops, not saying that they're terrible people. Like I've met some really nice cops and stuff, but I do get like when one of them messes up, it becomes a whole look on everybody. But I just hope that whoever the new chief of police is going to be someone that's okay with going to underserved, under-resourced areas and trying to figure out what can they do to make this area better in terms of just anything from security to like resources, things like that, because it sucks when you see all these things happen in inner city communities and it just doesn't get addressed the same way, right? I mean, I got my car broken into a couple weeks ago where they broke the window. Nothing was stolen, thankfully, right? But what am I going to do? I go the next morning, I get the window replaced. It was $150. And, I was like, I think I got to file a police report, right? Because that's like the right thing to do. You file a police report. It lets them know, like, hey, this kind of activity's happening here. Maybe we need to send more patrolmen to circle around the block a little bit more often to kind of prevent things like this from happening. And that's what I did. But it also felt kind of weird that I had to like ponder whether I was going to do that or not, And I think if the police made it feel more secure to do that, then that'd be great. If they said, hey, like this is the first thing you should do and educate people on things like this. I don't even know what the rules are if someone breaks into your car. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
finding out the next morning, I'm not gonna call 911, like, but at the same time too, it did happen. So I feel like there needs to be some sort of kind of tracking thing about this being an occurrence here. So I filed a police report, which file them online now.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that's going to be a job a police officer will need to do in the future if we can just follow these things online, but maybe an AI will take over that job for them. But it's just one of those things where I think that that's kind of like the only thing that I would want, I think, a chief of police to do is just understand the communities that they're serving,
Mhm.
understand the city and the communities within the city. You know what I mean? And really try to make it an effort to build bonds with people and stuff, because I do get it. It's just, I know in the next topic we're going to talk about does involve police officers too as well. But it's just one of those things where it's like, they shouldn't just be seen as these people who just come and disrupt and all that. But at the same time too, that's all we see them as, because that's all we've ever seen them do, So
Mm.
we do need somebody that's going to step in and be like, yo, I really want to protect and serve. I want to make sure the communities of LA understand that we're here for their safety and that they don't have to feel like we're unreliable to them, because that's how they've always been feeling to a lot of people here in these inner city areas. And I'm not talking about the wealthy areas, because the wealthy areas are like, they're taken care of. The people show up for them like within 2 minutes. You know what I mean? They have no issues. The problems is with the inner city people, where like they make it feel like they're bullies hanging around there and stuff, and that's not cool.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't be doing that too. You can't be making a crowd of people like they're in prison or something. That's so weird. Such a weird feeling.
Yeah, dude, I would love those more outreach programs. If I know over like downtown, like in Grand Park, they're always having food trucks and different events, like music festival type of deals,
Yeah.
free live performances. So if there could be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like some type of like cookout or some whatever type of event to where, yeah, you feel as if they care.
Yeah.
It's an understanding that they get the community that they're serving.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that definitely gets lost because a lot of these officers, they transfer, they come in from different cities, different states. They don't really know what's going on.
Yeah.
It's just a job to them. And there's a disconnect.
Exactly.
And, when you start generalizing people and saying, oh, that neighborhood, that district, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know what goes on there. I know what kind of people to expect. And it's like, well, you don't know me.
Yeah.
You know people around me, you know reputation.
Yeah.
And that's what gets lost in big city. You get in small town where you actually have like a neighborhood watch and you have like a neighborhood council.
Yeah.
You have people who are very involved.
Yeah.
I know where I live, they're trying to set that up and we're trying to be involved if that does come to happen.
Yeah.
But I think that's something we're going to always urge everyone be involved in some way or regard on a local level. And that needs to be built up, especially within inner city. Like every neighborhood, they should know each other. You should know your neighbors. You should know your community. You should know what your needs are and how to reach the people to address those needs. And it should be a community level, not just a me, I situation, which again, we're going to always talk about is a growing problem that needs to be fixed because we can't survive without a community. So if we could get a police chief that understands that embraces that and lifts up the community in a variety of ways and makes sure that we're understood and that we are
Mm-hmm.
able to get, like you said, decent response times. We definitely got to ramp up the police department. But the main
Yeah.
issue, which is why we all laugh when we talk about defund the police, is and do what? You want to take away the police department and do what with it instead? We understand there's police corruption. We definitely need a chief that's going to root that out and call it out when it happens. And there should be a process to safely report people who are causing problems and have them investigated and have them removed. I mean, I've heard situations like that. People get turned around and get fired because they're like whistleblowers or they're trying to call out something wrong that's going on or they're being pushed to just leave on their own. So we got to make sure that, these are people we can trust and that they're going to do the job. And they got to have their regular evaluations. You got to make sure that they're mentally fit to keep serving.
Yeah, makes sense. No, I mean, there's more variables now that you brought that up about like, the whole not feeling like they're there to do what they're supposed to do. And just like internally, I mean, the internal stuff I think is like beyond us, but I'm sure there's internal stuff where they're not allowed to say certain things.
Right.
And if like they do, then they get in trouble, they get transferred, they get fired, et cetera, which obviously makes everyone feel like, look how much more corrupted this whole thing is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like that's a whole conversation in itself about all that it feels like I'll be putting on my conspiracy hat if I start getting into that.
Bro, we bought some fresh aluminum foil, so I'll be right there to join you. But I think we're going to leave it there for that. So that was that topic. Rolling into the next topic for today's episode, we're going to be talking about USC. What's been going on at USC of late, Donald?
Yeah, so it's funny because when Mike and I were preparing for this episode, we were going to talk about what USC did in terms of the valedictorian speech being rescinded because we thought it was worth saying, what our thoughts are going to be about that because that felt like a really big thing that happened, right? But since then, from the time that happened, that Mike and I were prepping for this episode to the time right now that we're taping this episode, a lot more has happened. Like, it's literally not just about a speech anymore. Demonstrators have showed up, USC encampment and all that. But definitely, I wanted to get into this conversation because I just think, like, this is such an LA story. But also USC in itself, like they're one of the bigger private, if not the biggest private employer for the city of Los Angeles. I just think this definitely is worth having a conversation about just because I think it's going to touch on a lot of things from, politics to classism to what's happening in the Middle East and just like how much that war is striking a chord to the whole world and now has touched down in LA, like officially, right? It just feels like the most official thing LA has done in terms of talking about Israel, Hamas, and all that. But, initially the way this started was that USC rescinded the valedictorian speech. And obviously there was a lot of uproar for that. And I know that both sides have their reasons why they did it. I do understand that the valedictorian did feel betrayed by the university. The university cited that it was a safety issue, that's why they did it. I guess because she had pro-Palestinian views on her social media, they just felt like if she was going to say anything that was going to cause any sort of uproar, the university didn't want to have to do any sort of damage control is what they were trying to come across. We don't want to have to do that. So if we remove her, then we just kind of skip that part. And I think up to this point in that story, they were going to still do the ceremony. And I actually was at USC on the Saturday before the demonstration happened. The demonstration started this past Wednesday, but I was there on Saturday for the Festival of Books. It was all chill on Saturday. The Festival of Books was cracking and everybody was having a good time reading going through the booths, seeing the authors. A couple bookstores were there, a couple authors were there. There was actually a booth for Islam too. They were trying to show people the Quran in English, and
Hmm.
a lot of other spiritual people were there too. Some Buddhists had their own booths, and it was cool. It was like the Festival of Books at USC, and I thought it was cool. And then come Wednesday, I get the word that now there's demonstrations on the campus and stuff. Up to right now, I believe it got a lot crazier there because campus police got involved. LAPD got involved. We just talked about the LAPD and just the stigma and just the way we view them. It's kind of crazy how like this is the only time I hear about them is when they're gonna do something that feels very unfair. But the fact of the matter is that they arrested 93 people for trespassing at USC. From what I understood on Wednesday, I talked to friends that have people that work at USC, and they said that it was like a total lockdown in the campus.
Hmm.
You weren't allowed on campus unless you had a student ID. So unless you were a student ID or you worked for the university, you weren't even allowed to be on campus. And now they've done arrests. Obviously, it's a big back and forth. Some other pro-Palestinian organizers also joined the campaign movement. And it's crazy because I don't know what your thoughts are, Mike, but just my thoughts real quick on this. I feel like this is a PR nightmare for USC. I think the fact that they thought that they were going to somehow skip the speech and that would just be all cool, and now they got a whole bigger problem with their whole it's a bad look for the university, especially a university like USC, who's a very prestigious university. It's private and everything. But it's just insane to see that. Like at this point, I'm thinking in my mind, you should have probably just let her do the speech, right? Whatever happened was going to happen that weekend,
Hmm.
right? Because I think the ceremony was going to be on Friday, which they ended up canceling the ceremony as well. So the ceremony's canceled. The other people that graduated aren't going to be able to do any celebrations that they graduated. So they get screwed over for that whole, not having that experience and all that. But
Hmm.
at the same time, like if you just had her do her speech, whatever would have happened, probably would have happened. You probably could have hired more security if you were concerned. And then let's just say something crazy happens. It probably would have just made the weekend news. And then come Monday, it probably would have been back to normal. Everyone just carries on with their lives, And instead, it's this, and it's a lot crazier. And I totally understand where the students are coming from because that was a really messed up thing that USC did. And at the same time, too, these students are really passionate about
Hmm.
what's really happening in the Middle East, and they really do feel like, hey, like, I think
Yeah.
that, your ceremony, your graduation ceremony is not as important as a bunch of people getting killed overseas. You know what I mean? A lot of innocent lives being lost. So, it's kind of like a very rude
Hmm.
awakening. And I don't know, to me, it also speaks into just like the university mindset because I've been pondering about the story like a long time in terms of my thoughts on it. And like another thought I had was just, isn't this university in general, universities, colleges in general, like these places where people are supposed to think freely and kind of figure out who they are, what they stand for, what their beliefs are, and that like supposedly the universe is supposed to be open to that, right? They're supposed to be open to all these different viewpoints and all that. So it's kind of interesting how they're kind of shocked. And obviously this goes into Columbia University and all these other universities that are also having these situations happening. They're kind of shocked that like students are being this way. It's kind of like, well, doesn't your whole, institution, like, aren't they supposed to allow for this? Like, aren't there supposed to be a space for this to be allowed? I don't understand why there has to be law enforcement coming in and arresting students and arresting people for protesting something that I think, like, don't you guys teach these kids like they're supposed to be open and thoughtful and challenging views and all that stuff? I don't know, but yeah, those are my thoughts right now. I don't know what you have to say, Mike, but that's how I felt about it. I was trying to see it from both sides, but I don't know. I feel like there's always a lot to say, and I think this speaks a lot to just our viewpoints and as people, as society, and how it looks into politics and all that.
Yeah, I think I'm going to hit this in order. So you say free speech on universities, and I just want to go off on that, but I do
Yeah,
want to
go
touch
for it, man.
upon I do want to touch first on the whole situation about allowing her to just say her speech, right? And the
Yeah,
fact that you deprived all these students. I'm not used to going to big schools, so I don't know how many were in that graduating class that all got deprived of a graduation ceremony. That's insane to me
yeah,
because that's a huge moment in your life. You're going to remember that forever. So many films like to highlight that graduation moment, Yeah, it's a rom-com. It's these
yeah.
two crazy kids falling in love. But let's not forget about whatever. I don't know why I'm thinking about She's All That and that ending.
Yeah, man. 90s rom-coms, man. There's that. There was a Never Been Kissed. Couple of ones that took place in high school. Those are the best ones.
The best, dude. Still watch them, even though I shouldn't because I'm too old, but I still do. Anyway, the fact that you have those moments where it's such a huge monumental moment in your life. You're always going to refer to that. You have all these videos, you have all these pictures, you probably have all these Insta posts and TikToks nowadays. And to think that you're going to now have that removed from your experience, that's crazy to me, that you're not going to have that for yourself. Instead, it's going to be forever marred and scarred by the fact that in the midst of this huge conflict that's happening overseas, this is how big of a deal it is to where now you can't even experience your own graduation.
Yeah.
And of course, that sounds selfish, but still, it's something that you're going to remember for a lifetime. So the fact that something like that's going to be hanging over your head and always in your memory, that's a big thing. That shows you how big of a thing this is.
Yeah.
And again, unfortunately, when it comes to Palestine, Israel, we're always having this sense of been going on for so long, our whole lives, we've always heard about it. I know those of us who are older kind of tuned out of it to a certain degree because it's just a constant ongoing conflict that will never have a resolution. And I know the younger generation always has this perspective of why is this happening? It's always this in the now type of thing with the younger generation where for them, they feel so passionate about it because they think, how come you old farts haven't fixed this yet? It's up to us to fix this now. So there's a completely different perspective. I know a lot of older generation likes to think that these kids, they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know any better. What do they know? Why do they care? Especially coming from America, we don't deal with that sort of thing on a regular daily basis.
Yeah.
Unless you're going up in a very crime-ridden area, which some people do in this country, you don't really know what it's like to walk out your front door and know if you're not going to get shot or not. Know if you're going to make it home every night because there might be some random drive-by. Or you look at somebody wrong and they look at you and you're like, oh, you're wearing those colors? You're repping that? Oh, you're my enemy. Automatically, I'm going to end you.
Yeah.
The average American doesn't know what that is.
No.
And from my understanding of what's going on, because, I like looking at YouTube and hearing different people speak on things, which is always entertaining because there's so many different perspectives now. But the one group that constantly feels marginalized, like they don't have a voice, is actually conservative people.
Yeah.
Conservative voices, because their argument, which I've heard for a long time now, they would argue that on college campuses, they're not allowed to say what's on their mind.
Yeah.
They're not allowed to express conservative viewpoints because a lot of the argument, which is so ironic to me, is we want to promote free speech. We want to promote different voices, but not yours. Only the ones that we feel have not been represented up until this point.
Yeah.
So we're doing this very weird flip where the argument is this group has had the say for a long time. Now it's time for them to be quiet. And now it's time for you to speak.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned earlier, what happened to free discourse? What happened to free exchange of different ideas? All you're doing is saying, we're not going to present that to you. We're going to only show you this type of content and explore these kind of voices. But then it gets into a whole thing of, well, if I'm not allowed to be challenged, then how do I know I'm strong in my own position? It's something that I don't think I mentioned on this podcast before, but little aside, talking about faith for a little bit. Now everyone's going to tune out.
Yeah.
Talking about that. But, I had a religious instructor because, I went to private schools and stuff. And I remember he asked me, where was I with my faith, right? And I told him, I question it. I question every single bit of it because for me, these are stories. These are great, amazing stories that you read from the Bible.
Yeah.
There's great parables, great messages, but to me, they're stories. I can't take this as fact. I compare a dude walking on water to a guy who can touch people and they turn to gold. To me, these are similar things, turning water to wine,
Yeah.
And then you have a story of like Hercules and his trials, to me, they were similar things.
Yeah.
And to tell me one's history and one's fiction, I'm like, I don't know. To me, there's great lessons. Don't knock me on that. I like researching and studying these things from time to time because there's great lessons to be learned from them. Even though I don't take them as fact, I take them as amazing stories that have knowledge and wisdom embedded within them to share and impart for future generations. And thinking on that and expressing that to my religion teacher, who was like, yo, his name was Mr. Arroyo. And he looked at me and he's like, he thought it was interesting that I questioned everything because he saw the kind of person I was. He saw how I interacted with people because he caught me after a tutoring session.
Yeah.
Or I was tutoring someone on math and he wanted me to stay back and ask me some questions.
Yeah.
And he looked at the way I answered my questions and the stance I took and he's like, that's good. I like the fact that you question things and you're going to ask all the questions and you're going to seek out all the answers. And he told me that if at the end of that journey, if it brings me back to faith, I'll be like a mountain that couldn't be moved. I'll be like impenetrable because I know without a shadow of a doubt, I know for certain this is the path for me. And I did it because I found it for myself, not because I was told to simply shut my mouth and just recite what they tell me to.
Yeah.
Because that was my issue with some things. And I value having different religious instructors who were happy that I just didn't fall in line. And I thought that was so interesting to see that in religious instructors.
Mm-hmm.
Because I always had this impression of like, well, they just want you to blindly believe, blindly follow.
Yeah.
But they weren't wavered or concerned about the fact that I questioned things because, again, they saw the way I moved and operated. And they're like, this guy's a good head on his shoulders. I'm not concerned about that. But if he ends up on our side, then he's going to be one of our MVPs. He's going to be one of our secret weapons
Yeah.
that we could just throw at somebody. And I love that because even like growing up, random people will walk up to me with a book in their hand
Yeah.
and then like, have you heard about the good word? And I'm like, sell me your pitch. I want to hear it.
Yeah.
And then my mom would always be freaking out because the strangers walking up to me, asking me, like telling me stuff and trying to sway me. Give my mom that look. I'm like, don't worry about me being swayed. They're not going to sway me,
Yeah.
but I want to hear what they have to say. And I feel like that helped me in life to have that ability to say, come at me with your views. I don't care. Because sometimes people talking to me crazy. In the big groups, I would be more so quiet. Because if there's a louder voice that wants to be heard, I let them be heard. Because that's what
Yeah.
they want. They want everyone to stare at them as they peacock and strut about. I'm like, you do that because that's what you want. You want the attention. I care about the actual exchange of ideas. And if I feel like you're just going to just be difficult or you think you're going to try to break me, I'm like, good luck with that. But I'm not interested in stroking your ego.
Yeah.
I'm interested in if you actually want to get to know one another as opposed to just trying to get me to sign up to be on your side. So again,
Yeah.
I think that's a sad thing I see in colleges now and why we keep talking about people being soft and not being able to have a strong backbone and really stand on their own 2 feet.
Yeah.
Is because you don't coddle people, man. I think
No.
this is one of the things that, where I would take a stance and people would think, because I always say I'm very honest on the fact that I align left, right?
Yeah.
I don't shy from that just because I'm going to say things that you're going to think, oh, okay,
Yeah.
you're okay with this and that. But then they're also going to hear me say, but I'm not okay with this or that either. And then they're going to be like, oh,
Yeah.
but where you stand then? Like, well, I lean more left because there's just things I'm not going to vote for when it comes to the Republican Party, unfortunately. There's just certain things I don't align with. But you're going to find me very close to that line that splits the 2 sides between the middle. I'm not far left.
Yeah.
And I'm not just middle left where you just go along with what the party says. Far left are
Yeah.
the ones pushing the wild agendas and the crazy ideas that you hear on Fox News rant about. Usually they're ranting about someone with extreme points of view to begin with. And then the
Yeah.
people who are just say they're left just go along with, okay, what do the Democrats say now? What does my party say? I'm just going to co-sign.
Yeah.
But when you have voices like the valedictorian we have, where she's looking at things, she had a minor in genocides.
Yeah.
That was an actual thing she was able to minor in.
Yeah.
So if she feels like her people are suffering something along those lines, I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that's her perspective on it.
Yeah.
She feels as if she has skin in the game. She feels as though she has a right to say something about what's going on. Now, my view of her speech, maybe the university could say they could look at the speech before you give it. Maybe that,
Mm-hmm.
like screen it beforehand. And if she deviates from script, you cut the mic or something. I think the university has a right to do something like that. But my whole thing with her speech and who she is, if she was someone going around espousing hate speech, I get it.
Yeah.
My understanding is she did share a link on her Insta from an anti-Zionist website group that they may go off the handle and say some things, but there was probably something on that website that she saw that she liked, and she maybe reposted a statement. I'm just making assumptions. I've heard her Insta's private, but of course people got on there and started sharing what it was. I'm not going to go ahead and say what that is. I'm not doing that.
No.
But what I will say is if she personally was going around threatening people, inciting violence, I get it. That's justified. I think no question anyone would agree that's justified to not allow her to speak in front of a crowd of people because she's going to probably stir them up and cause a scene.
Yeah.
But for her being the best in her class, the valedictorian, that's what it is. She had high marks. She excelled in her academics. She is what many would regard on paper and like an ideal future citizen of this country. To deny her the right to speak in front of her classmates and express herself and make a strong case for why she has the right to speak. She earned that right to speak in front of her peers, in front of that crowd of people. And to say that simply because of her religious creed and some choices that she's made, obviously you can make some bad choices and it'll affect you severely, but all she was doing is expressing views, sharing ideas, And that's to me the extent of what I know of what she had done. It's revealed that she was part of protest, she was inciting violence somewhere, then fine. But we have not seen that. And she's a young woman. I would be surprised if she took part in anything wild and crazy. If she really was getting high marks, I think she was too busy studying to do anything wild like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, but the first time I heard that conservative voices were being restricted, and now we see because of the conflict based on your nationality, your voice is restricted.
Yeah.
That's huge. I know that was one of the things you were proposing is like, what does that mean?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking about the university experience. It's like, isn't that part of the university experience that you could be anything you identify with, anything that's part of your identity, creed, background, and that it's supposed to be a space where you kind of find yourself and whatnot. And I think that at the same time, too, like the whole speech cancellation thing was just such a one of the first questions people had. And one of the first questions I had, too, was just like, okay, so who's funding this university?
Mm,
You know what I mean? Because clearly there's two sides at war right now in the Middle East, and they just canceled the speech from someone who's on one side of it, you know what I mean, or has views of showing favor to one side. So then what does that mean? Are you saying that the other side is funding the universities? You're not allowed to show any sort of sympathy towards the other side because it goes against the side that you're on? Like, it's just kind of weird.
mhm,
I don't know. Like, I don't think that's right. And also, I just feel like that university is supposed to be a space where you can be that person, especially a private, or I mean, any university. I would say not a Christian university. I understand there's Christian universities as well, like Azusa Pacific, where I have friends that have gone there and they tell you it's a conservative Christian university. So
right.
if you don't fall in line with conservative Christian views, you're kind of a problem to them. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm,
you kind of have to know that if you're going to go there, that's what you have to expect. So kind of like fall in line or maybe pick another school to go to, because if not, you're going to be 4 years fighting these people. So it's just kind of interesting because a place like USC, it's a private university. Like I would think they'd just be like, hey, like we accept all people. We want all people to feel like they're welcome and that they can express themselves and who they are and everything. Because then to me, it kind of becomes a thing of like the LGBTQ where they fought so hard for them to be heard and all that. And I just think it's not cool
mhm,
that the universities were supposed to be the places that they can actually express themselves and now they can't. And I just feel like it's just such a backwards thing because the universities made everyone believe that this is what they are, right? Even when you go to college, you can pursue any degree that you want, any profession, any field, all that stuff. Because they make you feel that way. They make you feel like, hey, like you're gonna go and be you here, and because you are you, you're gonna get a degree and you're gonna go out in the workplace and you're gonna be something. And now you're saying, hey, we can't have you say this or that, and we can't have you say this and that as well. And if you fall under these things, and we're gonna have to like censor you. And I don't know, it just feels so backwards, and I think it kind of sucks for the whole university experience, and that's my thing with it. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing to see unfold for sure.
yeah, I think the one thing about it that kind of got under my skin was the whole, well, it's a safety issue. We just couldn't ensure the student safety and we couldn't get enough security. We couldn't do this and do that. And knowing about how much money these universities sit on, I know definitely the Ivy League schools, USC is different because, it's considered like a state school. So that funding is a little bit different. But come on, man. There's so many alumni, so many private donors that put so much money into that school.
Yeah.
If they have their own kids going to those schools, you tell me they can't raise extra money on the quick and ready to just make sure there's enough security on hand in case something happened. And like you said, it was on lockdown. Anyone without a student ID couldn't get in.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure there should be a system at least to be able to scan that ID and see they're a student. So there's no one with a fake student ID getting in. But who knows these days, man? Some people just glance at things. It's like on those shows when they just flash an FBI badge and just let them in.
Yeah, exactly. No, and that's the thing. Like, I don't know what they did, but it just kind of feels interesting that they went to this thing. They did one thing and they canceled the speech, and I think they thought that it was gonna blow over. and
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't. And now it blew up in their face. And I'm just like, dude, this is such a bad look because you have your own students kind of feeling embarrassed that they went there now, you know? And then you got employees that work there for you who probably feel weird about the situation now. And they probably
Mm-hmm.
feel like they're being put in this awkward place of, I just came here to collect my check, And who knows? I'm sure there's some employees of USC who are of the Islamic faith.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about them and I'm thinking about what are they thinking? They're probably conflicted. Like, they're like, what the hell? I know you pay me, but damn, like now I kind of feel like I have to hate you, but I also need that check every 2 weeks, so I would hate it, man. I would feel very conflicted. It would feel very awkward for me, but I just think it's tough, man. Like, I don't think they really thought through what they were doing when they did it. It just feels like such a boneheaded thing, man, and
Mhm.
for it to be USC, it's like, yo, like, this is not the place that I think you guys make these mistakes, man. I expect these mistakes, like, on the Cal State level, but
Yeah.
not you guys.
Cal State, bro. Yeah, man. It's just wild because, they do it out of fear of what it may mean. But, when you do that, they fed into it.
Yeah,
They made it a big thing.
yeah,
If they had her go, speech was fine. Sure, people might have showed up on the outside to try to get in, but you had enough security to stop them.
yeah,
And it would just blown over. It would have been a blip in the news cycle. Oh, this could have been a thing, but nothing actually happened. I understand trying to, be preventative and,
mhm,
that's a huge thing now, I think, is people don't want to see things go there. But
yeah,
like you mentioned, it's like, oh, is it because of the people backing the school? That's why they felt pressure to do this.
yeah,
Now, unfortunately, you're feeding into any type of resentment or animosity towards a specific group now, because now they're saying, oh, you got power like that, you have influence like that, and now you're feeding into all these dumb conspiracies. I'm going to say they're all dumb conspiracies that people have, and it just feeds into that. And now you're going to stir up more negativity unintentionally because you allowed fear to get the best of you in making your judgment. Instead of really assessing it and looking at it, she seemed like a nice girl. I don't think she really meant anything bad by what she was going to say. And it was going to just blow over. But now you got everyone wanting to look into this in a negative light. And now we're just hoping that the school just didn't make the whole friction worse, which is ridiculous, that they fed into it.
yeah, and I don't feel like I've heard any sort of apology from the college either.
Mm.
I don't know if they plan to do anything like that. Say we weren't expecting all this. I don't know. It just feels weird too. It's like at least communicate. Like, hey, we made a dumb decision, and now this blew up in our face, and we're trying to do the best we can to assess the situation or something. I don't know, but I don't know if they said anything. Honestly, don't think they have. I think they just sent the police out there, and poor campus police, man. They were thinking like they just need a job, you know what I mean? They're just trying to feed their families and stuff. I don't know if they get a hookup with a college. Now they have to actually go in there, act like cops. It's kind of not what they were probably thinking they were gonna have to do.
Yeah, that's tough, man. And it always comes down to that, right? Like the people on the very bottom, people with the money made these decisions, but the people on the bottom have to now deal with students probably spitting them in the face and
Yeah.
and maybe like punch them in the gut and stuff. And then like, yo, man, I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
I'm just following orders. And the kids are thinking that they're an extension of the arm. I'm like, no, dude, like I don't care.
Yeah.
It's like that whole thing, like, bro, I just work here. That's all this is.
Yeah, bro. I totally feel them, man. I think that's not what they thought. They thought, hey, I'm going to do security for this private university where nothing bad happens because, it's a private university and it's in an okay neighborhood that's getting a lot better now. Especially because USC bought a bunch of property in that area. It's a whole different city there. I don't know if you've been there lately, but that whole stretch from like Figueroa and Exposition all the way up towards like Adams Boulevard-ish, it's all a bunch of restaurants and fast food spots, like better fast food spots. I mean, they have Carl's Jr., McDonald's and everything, but they do also have like a Five Guys there. There's like Starbucks there. There's all this stuff. So they obviously are making it like palatable to the students to be like, hey, you could live here while you're here for the 4 years. And I'm sure like security guards that get hired are like, yo, man, this is a pretty dope spot to work at. It's chill. The students do their thing. They come from rich families. And it's not a big deal. Like I don't really have to do much.
No.
No, they have to do way more than they're getting paid to do. They're probably thinking that.
No. What USC gotta do? Because you mentioned Five Guys, bro. I'm like, man, it's been a minute. We're gonna have to hit that up one of these days. But what they gotta do to get right with everybody, they gotta put an In-N-Out in there. I don't care how much traffic jam you create. You already create a problem.
Yeah.
The least you could do is create a pain in the butt for the rest of that neighborhood.
Yeah.
Living in that area and just have a 10-block long line to go into that In-N-Out.
Yeah.
Bruh.
When I went to the Festival of Books, I actually stopped at Chick-fil-A because I haven't been to that in like a long time, like years. And I was like, I went there, bro, and it was like a wait. Like they took my order right away, but then I had to wait like a good 10, 15 minutes. And then it's just a bunch of USC kids around there, just all of us waiting in line to eat. I was just like, dang, dude, imagine an In-N-Out would be insane, man.
They owe the students of USC In-N-Out. We're going to start a petition. Check it out, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to start a petition for In-N-Out at USC. Let's make it happen.
Yeah.
They got to make amends, bro.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're doing it. And I know they got some PR people behind trying to figure out what the best thing to do is.
Psh, fire all of them, every single one of them.
Yeah, dude. Just admit you made a mistake and that you didn't expect it to get this far, but that you're gonna do your best to rectify it, maybe reinstate the ceremony or something. I don't know. They can fix it, man. That's my thing. They could fix the problem if they want to. They just I don't know why they're not choosing not to or trying to hold off something. I don't know. It's really, really bizarre.
All right, man. I think wraps up our segment for today. Thanks everybody for listening. And yeah, be sure to tune in next time. We're going to try to do these more regularly. So keep an eye out for that. We'll definitely keep you up posted on our socials. And all right, guys, till next time.